JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a household name for anyone who watches anime, be it a little to a lot each year. Love it or hate it, everyone knows the name JoJo even if they don't really understand what it is. Hell, sometimes the fandom doesn't even know what it is, which is part of its charm. 6 or so months prior to Part 3 getting released in the anime form, I decided to check out the first season of JoJo, which adapts the first 2 parts of the story, which were Phantom Blood and Battle Tendency. Each part of JoJo is a story focused on a member of the Joestar family, who lives in a world full of bizarre adventures. At each arc we follow a hefty cast of characters deal with anything from vampires to a man licking a cherry far too sexually. Over-the-top fights, poses to make you question what the hell it is that you're watching, and personalities so memorable that we have no choice but to make them into memes. The background art has always been eye-catching, with unique line work, and depending on the part, the way the environment is colored in is quite glorious, especially in Part 4, which was breathtakingly beautiful in terms of scenery, with a retro-style animation but refined in a modern way to make us feel like we're back in the 80s, but thankfully not totally, as there is enough movement to these character models while still having enough static images to blend old school with new. With each part, the style is refined more and more, and when JoJo is at its lowest visually, it's still pretty interesting to see, as put any screenshot of JoJo next to any modern anime, and you'll see it has a very unique style that's worth appreciating even when it's at its lowest. With every part also came a fantastic soundtrack that both meshed well with the theme and location of the story, while also just being solid standalone music that you can't go wrong listening to on a Sunday drive. Surprisingly, I watched parts 1 and 2 without really knowing what the series was, so I didn't have strangers online yelling at me saying how I have to make it my new religion and it's the best thing ever, so I got to experience JoJo with an unbiased set of eyes. So I watched the first arc and thought, well, this was fun. Not that into the main character or any of the characters in Part 1 past Dio, who though didn't have much going on past being the big bad and screwing over everyone, he still had a very unique personality that you couldn't help but love him, and it was nice just having a dick of a character on screen again with a large amount of charisma. The unique style to the show was a big reason I enjoyed Part 1 at all, as it didn't look like any of the other anime I'd been watching around that time. The style of storytelling was unique and felt as if I was back in the 80s. And even the main power system, Haman, which can be summed down to as breathing to be a badass, was solid all around. Didn't love it or hate it, but rather was intrigued to see more and was excited to learn that this was a long-running series. Part 2 then rolled around, and unlike the previous lead character, Jonathan, who though was fine, I found him to be a tad too plain for my liking. A large reason Part 2 stuck out to me was because of the lead character in this story, Joseph. This man had charisma, a personality that immediately hooked you, and no matter what he said or did, you wanted to follow his journey, which made binging his arc incredibly easy, where with the first part, I took my sweet time with it. When you have a strong personality such as his, watching the same style of story play out was a lot easier than the first time around, even if I wasn't too invested in the power system at this point in time. As this time I was really rooting for the main character, where with the first part I didn't have any emotional attachment to him or the supporting cast backing him. So when I walked into Part 3, I was quite surprised to see that the author decided to remove the Haman power mechanic, which honestly led to fights feeling a tad boring after a while, and instead replaced it with stands, these floating spirits that fight for the user with distinct and unique abilities. Of course, you learn how this happens eventually over the course of Stardust Crusaders, but it did take me by surprise, but also made my enthusiasm for this new part a lot higher than it already was. As sure, I loved the main character in Part 2, but I never was all that interested in the action in JoJo up to that point past a fight here or there. So seeing a power system that would vary from person to person, that means I'd have the perfect JoJo part as long as I enjoyed the characters and story overall, which for the most part I did. Dio once again returned. The main character Jojo was simply a badass with a hardened personality that I could get behind, with catchphrases that never got old, no matter how many times he said them. And you can't beat an older and wiser Joseph with the same over-the-top reactions we all know and love while traveling with the crew on a quest to Egypt, mixed with a fair amount of decent comedy. I did find the story to run a little too long with 48 episodes and probably needed 40 at best. Most of the villains were personality of the week, with no real development past their stands being explored exceptionally well, but sadly most of the side casts weren't developed all that much, and those that could have become something special were taken away far too soon. And those that weren't didn't seem to have much growth, as I would have liked. But still, I found part 3 to be better than the previous 2 stories, and the future of Jojo was looking quite hopeful, as so far each part had been even better than the last for me, and we started off with a series that I respected and just continues to get better. With a new power system and more complex stories at hand, what could go wrong with Jojo at this point? Spoilers, nothing went wrong, it just continued to get better. Part 4 then rolls around with Diamond is Unbreakable, and for the first time I had very few negative things to point out, as for the most part I found part 4 to be a mix of everything that works in Jojo with very few missteps. You have Josuke, a man who on one hand you think will kick your ass, but on the other, he might also have your back depending on his mood that day. His appearance was unique, radiated authority, with the entire side crew being quite special. The artist Rohan continued to rise up my ranking the more I saw of him each arc. Koichi was a lovable kid who on one hand you think needs to be protected, but at other points he is the one to protect his friends. The story set in this town with strange activities occurring was a breath of fresh air, as no longer was it save the world or insert long and dragged out story, but rather weird shit was happening and let's see if we can stop the person behind it. What truly tied this part together was the villain Kira, as for the first time not only was the villain impressive from their initial personality, but they were fleshed out in a frightening and thorough way. He was a monster that you could really understand his mindset and what led him to commit these heinous acts. He needed to be stopped, but for the first time you got to understand the main villain alongside the main cast. He was insane, he was powerful, but like with the main cast, you got to explore his psyche, where before you only ever understood this is what the villain wants to do and never were able to understand why. Where with Kira, you explore his messed up mind, so by the time you leave Diamond is Unbreakable, you truly appreciate the villain on a written level. All the stand fights from parts 3 and 4 were usually better than they were bad. Some were quite complex, with others being a lot of punching and talking to then calling it a day. But when the characters really work, they tie an episode and arc together exceptionally well. So by the time I walked out of part 4, I really felt as if I understood the hype that Jojo truly was. That is, until I saw part 5, Golden Wind. That's where I truly became a Jojo fan, foaming at the mouth, needing more and hoping that this story would never end. I honestly enjoyed Jojo right from the start. With every part it got better, and even when I had issues with pacing, fight sequences, or even the characters being a personality of the week, it still entertained me every single episode, and I felt as if I could watch the series for the rest of my life. But Golden Wind is really the story that was made for me, and turned me into a true Jojo fan. I'm the kind of guy who enjoys questionable characters, not the morally righteous, do no wrong heroes to always save the day, but those questionable ones that make you conflicted with how you should feel in any given episode. Golden Wind's main cast are all in a gang. The main character Giorno has his introduction be stopping girls from being robbed to returning their goods to then walking away as he steals their money after making them think he had helped them out. If this isn't how you set the stage for a gang anime, I don't know what is. I love a good quest to stop the big bad from destroying the world, and those can be quite fun as part 3 was. But part 4 was set around a town and the lives of the residents, but the world never really felt truly screwed, but rather the town was. A smaller, more self-contained story with a fleshed out villain. With part 5, that same style of storytelling is seen here. This is a tale about a man who wants to take out a leader of the gang in Passion due to his own experiences with them as a child, thinking the current leadership isn't the answer. That is his goal. The current boss is a scumbag, making life for those around them quite horrible, as both Giorno and one of the members of this gang, Bruno, agree that the current way of life is harmful with how current affairs are being handled, and maybe it's time for a change in leadership. They still are in a gang and want to be in a gang, but the entire goal is to take out the leader no one knows the face or name of and replace him with someone more fit to rule, such as Bruno or Giorno. On one hand you think, yeah, the general folk will be safer with a better gang leader, but on the other hand you think, what the hell am I saying? They are still in a gang, and I love it when series can pull off a story such as that. Part 5 is truly an ensemble cast. Every character is the main character in Golden Wind, as this group run by Bruno all have distinct personalities that all have multiple arcs to shine in, all have time to grow and become more than their initial personality. But best of all, not only is the boss even better than Kira, every villain they fight also has time to shine on a personal level. Up to this point, sure, the big bad might have had a strong personality and moments to shine, but the villain of the week was pretty much just an initial personality before we move on past a select few. With Golden Wind, the more characters I met, the more I recognized that Araki had cracked the code to Jojo. That his already impressive series could become something so much more that I would even go as far to say is a masterpiece. Up to this point in Jojo, when a villain died or were removed from the story, I didn't really care. Hell, even some of the supporting cast members I didn't care about on an emotional level, but enjoyed enough so when they were on screen, I wasn't annoyed. But there wasn't enough time to truly get to know them, or when there was, for for one reason or another, they weren't the main focus when they should be. So what ended up happening was they became a stranger that just so happened to amuse me. With Golden Wind come every battle, there was time to get to know these other gang members on a personal level, see how the relationships between other members was. Though we were following Bruno's gang, he wasn't the only leader out there, and these antagonists are people alongside Bruno's crew. These other groups, such as the Hitman team, that were after the boss for their own reasons but needed to take out Bruno and his team so no one stands in their way, were equally fantastic as the central crew. In any other parts, I wouldn't care about guys like these getting killed off. They aren't our main character and we don't really know them past their initial personality and what their powers are. With Golden Wind, I cared a whole lot. At first, I didn't think too highly. I mean, when we just lose a random guy from one of the other squads, who cares? But when you see what it does to the team, you recognize that they are no different than our main group. They're friends, companions, real people who care for one another. They fight, they laugh, they mourn, they work hard together for their goal. And in the middle of arcs, you get moments to really see how much they truly look out for one another, trust in each other, and how they would give their lives for their crew, identical to how anyone in Bruno's crew would do the same. With each arc came a sadder of Brandon, who felt horrible when members of the Hitman team were killed, and though I knew they had to die as otherwise the main cast couldn't survive, but I truly understood the personalities, the motives, and relationships of this crew, and with each death, you saw the pain that it caused the others. It just got worse and worse as time went on. I never expected something like this in Jojo. Each arc wasn't just a cool fight and maybe we get development for the main cast, it's that on top of that, the characters they were fighting were being explored exceptionally well alongside the main cast, which means fights were actually telling a story, that the weight of a punch had meaning as it could mean the death of a person, not just the villain of the week. A true person with feelings, motives, and desires in life identical to Giorno, Bruno, Mista, all of the main cast, something that I felt past stories such as Stardust Crusaders severely lacked, as the supporting cast remained to be their initial image without too much growth 9 times out of 10. With the main crew in part 5, I understood everyone on a fairly deep level, unlike with previous parts where only a select few had this level of depth to their character writing. I understand what drives Giorno, and how he has this way of inspiring the group so much that he becomes the unofficial leader without even trying. How at first you think maybe he doesn't have that strong of a personality, but with each episode comes a man who shines even brighter than the last, which makes you want to follow him to the depths of hell. Bruno, a man who deeply cares for every member of his team, would give his life for them before asking anyone to die for the cause if he has a chance to give up his own life. Who with each backstory, we see what drove each and every one of these characters to follow a life of crime, and it wasn't because of anyone or anything other than one simple man named Bruno. A leader who saved them in their moments of need, be it a Baccio, a man who failed at his one dream of protecting people, but because of a clumsy mistake ended up costing another their life. Because of Bruno, he was given a second chance so he can make amends in his heart. Fugo, someone who has anger issues due to immense pressure from parents and those around him, that eventually made him explode, and for very understandable reasons. Where most would continue down the wrong path, thanks to Bruno, he's able to calm down and make rational decisions and follow a man who truly cares for him, unlike the previous adults who used and abused him. Narnacha, a kid who lost his family and truly had no future in sight, but because of the kindness of Bruno, he vowed to follow him and repay his kindness to become someone as great as this man. To Mista, someone who was forced to fight back and because of that had his life ruined, but once again, because of Bruno, someone who was destined for failure was given a second chance at life, with a greater purpose on the horizon. All the characters in this cast, you get to know their past, their present, and what they want in the future. You feel as if with each new story, no matter who is the star of that arc, you are excited to see them. All their stands are complex, not just something that can hit hard to defeat an enemy, but it's that they're fairly complex and let situations play out in the most unique ways we've ever seen. Be it Baccio's moody blues being able to replay the past, or Mista's sex pistols that are these 6 talking bullets, all with a unique personality that can control the path a bullet takes. To even Giorno's gold experience that is one of the coolest stands I've ever seen, that has the ability to give life to objects, which allows for some of the most creative scenes in Jojo to date. Everyone has a unique power that perfectly matches their personality, and even when the most destructive stand is thrown against them, they have the willpower, the support of their teammates, and drive to overcome it. And because of creative thinking, not just being able to punch harder than the other guy, they're able to overcome these situations. And when they don't, the emotional impact of a character death hits harder than any part before it. Golden Wind managed to not only take the story design I prefer, a more grounded tale not focused on the world, but rather a city with more personal driven stories. Then instead of a morally righteous character, we have a very morally gray set of gang members, all with their own desires that drive them to follow the path their leader has laid out. where they will make questionable decisions, do horrible deeds from time to time, but aren't evil or good characters, just people who just so happen to have followed the path of a gang member for one reason or another, thanks to the man named Bruno, who saved them in their time of need. And when characters break away from that path, you understand why, because we had gotten to know them while also learning about Giorno and the antagonists we witness. Jojo was a very good anime right from the get-go, but Golden Wind has everything that makes the formula what it is truly pop like no story before it. And now I understand why it's so revered in Japan, especially when it comes to Golden Wind. When you have a complex protagonist like Giorno, with a questionable quest of overthrowing a gang leader, with a supporting cast as memorable as your lead character, with every antagonist as deep and thought out as any of the main group, on top of having a villain so terrifying, complex, lovable, and hateable wrapped up into one, that every single fight truly has a story being told, which makes you wish both parties could live, as they all have their reasons of acting in this way. But because this feels realistic, you know only one gang can truly prevail. There can only be one boss, and not everyone will see the end. That's how you know Jojo has hit its sweet spot. Gang stories are just my thing, so it's quite possible that even if future arcs use nearly all the same mechanics as seen with Golden Wind, I may not like them as much as Part 5, but the thing is, everyone will have their own Jojo part, the one that just clicks perfectly for them, which I truly believe I found mine with Golden Wind. Every fight in Jojo has been at the very least fun. Sometimes they were quite fantastic, but every fight in Golden Wind was different from the last, pushed what a stand fight could be, either by introducing a new style of stand or showing that a power can be applied in a multitude of ways, as seen plenty of times with Giorno. That whether it be a main character or the villain for that week, each fight would be carefully planned out and nothing would feel like an ass pull. That visually, each episode would be breathtaking, with no real noticeable dips past a few minor inconsistencies that were to be expected. That each character would feel fresh, unique, and full of personality as soon as you lay eyes on them. Where their voice actors would give it their all so you can buy into them as people and not an over-exaggerated anime character. So the personal stories of everyone truly mattered. Even when you disagreed with their actions, you understood why they were truly doing something. A grand quest to overthrow a boss of a mafia ends up being more intense, more heart-throbbing than any quest to take out a man who could destroy the world because of how personal this story felt on all sides. A good author will take their past works and learn and grow from it, see what works and what doesn't, where to improve while also trying something new. Araki was great from day one, ahead of his time and still is, but when Part 3 rolled around and he removed Haman for stands, while it may have shook some, he recognized there was only so much one could do with that system, and for a story as long as Jojo, you need something that will provide for more complex fight sequences. Right there, we see how he reinvented the battle style while not forgetting about Haman, and making the reader understand why stands were now a thing without totally forgetting what came before. But with each part, the characters became better, more thought out, while the stands alongside them became more than just scary visuals of the week. It was as if the deeper we go into Jojo, the more thought out the stands, characters, and story became. That everything needed a personality, and with Golden Wind I can truly say I am a Jojo fan. I've always enjoyed the series, at times I've loved it, but Golden Wind to me is the definition of perfection. Everything I wanted the franchise to be is present in this part, and alongside the director for Part 5, I'm grinning ear to ear witnessing this part unfold in the anime medium. Maybe you read bad scans back in the day, which made you think Giorno has no personality or a power just works. But when you see the story told with proper translations, you'll come out appreciating this part that I personally consider to be the most complex with the most personality Jojo has ever seen, which wasn't an easy feat, as Jojo has always been full of personality. But when I can come out appreciating villains to the same degree I appreciate the main cast, and not because they're underdeveloped, in fact I think they are the most developed we've ever seen. It just shows how great Jojo truly is, especially when we have a fun story such as this surrounding a gang. With each part has come a story pushing what a battle series can be, with more color, more expression, a new look, and one could say a new style to fit the current story. So yeah, I can't wait to see where the series will continue to go from here, and how this bizarre story will continue to grow and push what battle series can truly be. Jojo has a pretty passionate fan base, and whatever your favorite part is, whatever makes Jojo what it is for you, that is your opinion, which I'm going to respect. This is just my journey with the franchise, and we all will have our own. Maybe you fell in love with it from part 1 and never looked back. Maybe the Jojo part for you has yet to be adapted, or possibly has yet to be made and you're waiting for Araki to create it for you. Whatever your journey is for JoJo, I'd love to hear yours down in that comment section below, or if you just have some thoughts on the video. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like to show your support, and if you happen to be new around here and want to see more of me in the future, be sure to subscribe. Lastly, if you want to help make projects such as these possible, consider heading on over to my Patreon to help make what I do here possible for as little as $1 a month, if you so wish. But until next time everyone, please take care and have a good one.